Welcome to the lecture series of Sedimentology and Stratigraphy. Today we are going to talk about the system tracks, the depositional environment, or what type of continental margins are present which show this relationship between sediment supply and sea level change. So in order to understand this, we have to first understand that what type of environment is present, then what kind of system tracts are formed when sea level is rising or falling, or maybe there is some kind of exceptional situation where there is a constant sea level or constant sediment supply. So before we start with that, let's just quickly revise about few things which we have learned in the previous lectures so that it becomes easy for you and you can recall all those terminologies. So initially we started with sea level and sediment supply, right? Because when we were finding a relationship between the two, that is when we say that we are talking about sequence stratigraphy. Okay, so in this what happened is that we saw if sea level is rising or falling, that is basically eustachy. Then we talked about the sediment supply, whether it is like sediment supply is constant or it is huge in amount, right? After that, what we studied was that if this is the land area and this is your sea area, or maybe some water body is present over here, so you have to talk about the shoreline, that the dynamism of shoreline, how it is changing, whether it is moving towards the land, whether it is going towards the sea. So we saw all those cases. In that first we discussed about that if it was moving landwards, right? So it was nothing but transgression. And after that, some kind of deposition takes place, so we observe a succession in a field. So when we observe this is actually the evidence you find in a field before you start digging deep into it, that what was the process, right? So when you look at the Facies and you see how either it is coastal plain lying over the offshore or onshore, or what is the criteria basically, how they have been deposited or how they have reached this stage that this kind of deposition has taken place, right? So from this evidence you can go back to whether it is retrogradational or whether it is progradational, or if there is no change in Facies, you can say if there is constant Facies or repetition of the succession, repetition of basically the lithology, suppose a lithology again, so it is known as aggradation, right? So this is nothing but the stacking of one Facies over the same Facies again. Okay, so in transgression we find that there is retrogradation. That means the finer grains are up in upward direction, basically in the upper zone, whereas in the lower zone coarser material is present. So now if you look at regression, in that what is happening, that the shoreline is moving towards the seawards. Now when it moves towards the seawards, there could be chances of erosion, and at times there could not be chances of erosion. So when this erosion comes into picture, this is known as forced regression, and this can also take place when sea level is rising, right? But the movement, the shoreline should be in the seaward direction, and also the Facies succession which is formed is known as progradation, right? And at certain point, we introduced first the concept of accommodation, and we saw that this is nothing but the infilling of the sediment whenever there is an available space, right? So there will be a point till when the accommodation will get filled or till where the space is available. This is nothing but a balance between the sediment supply and what? And the sea and your sea level. Okay, now what is happening, that sea level is providing the sediments and then they are coming, and you are getting an equilibrium between what? So I can say either it is sediment supply and accommodation rather than the sea level, because sea level is actually producing the sediments and causing it to basically consequencing in infilling of the basin. So when this balance is created, this forms an equilibrium profile or surface, which is kind of an imaginary surface, you can say. Notional surface is the term what scientists or geologists use. Okay, so till here, until the equilibrium is attained, Till this point this keeps on filling, but after that if anything is going on, it is known as reworking of maybe waves, maybe reworking is taking place by waves or by tidal currents. Okay, so now when a balance is being created between these two, what will happen? At times the stacking takes place of similar species, and that is known as aggradation. Okay, so now what we discussed over here is that you are having a succession, and you have to see what type of succession is it. How you will see it? When you will analyze the species or the species distribution in a whole strata, you will see, right? So after that, what you will see, whether it is a retrogradational, whether it is a progradational or aggradation. After you have clarified this, now you are going to go back to how it has formed, whether it is transgression, whether it is regression, and also you have to keep in mind that you always have to talk relative